The pads were on. CJ Stroud was off, and a guy continued to straight up make plays. Plus, DeMeco Ryans, it's very clear who he loves. A lot to get into. Day 5 of Texans training camp in the locker room begins now.
Yeah. Yeah. It's the locker room on YouTube. You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey. Locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room.
All right, so we finally got pads. And we got perhaps CJ Stroud's worst day of training camp. Talked to Brooks Kubena, who had his boots on the ground, about what his observations were. It is the locker room, number one source for Texans daily digital content. I'm Landry Locker. You can hear me Monday through Friday, 10 to 2, Sports Radio 610, and on the Odyssey app. We talked to Will Anderson today. There was a lot of good stuff from that interview, so download the Odyssey app. Check it out, Sports Radio 610. Fun stuff with Will. Let's get right into training camp day 5 takeaways with Brooks Kubena, Houston Chronicle. He was on the scene, and Brooks, you were right there for CJ Stroud. What did you make of the struggles? Is it much to do about nothing? Is there a little bit more to it? What did you make of CJ Stroud's struggles?
Well, it's still a second week of training camp. Obviously, you don't want to see CJ Stroud throw pick sixes if you invested a number 2 overall pick in him. But I mean, this is I thought that we'd see CJ Stroud come in, and he had his whole entire premise for being a number 2 overall pick was that he was a precise thrower. I mean, he talked about himself being a ball placement specialist. So it is alarming to see him throw 2 picks in one practice. Especially even if it is against Derek Stingley in coverage. But, I was standing next to Clint Sterner watching that throw, 10-yard out down the sideline. Clint immediately said, and I hope I'm not speaking for him, but he's just like, man, I hate that route. Like it's a tough throw. It's Stingley's getting better, and I mean, just seeing him play the last couple of weeks and him coming back, I think that's good. But Davis Mills was part of the reason why they drafted Stroud, was because he threw 3 pick sixes. So when Stroud throws it, that's a problem. But we're going to talk to Bobby Slowick tomorrow. Part of what I think Stroud's going through here is going through his progression, studying this playbook. And every offensive player I've talked to has talked about how big and dense it is. Damian Pierce called it the Bible in terms of length. And maybe Stroud's just having trouble memorizing some verses here. I think you're going to see him struggle, but I mean, the real tape is going to come whenever they play against the Patriots next week. And I think whenever you've seen him throw deep balls, we're going to see him struggle too. So while it's not nothing, it's still early, and we'll get to see how he plays against some real competition whenever it's not defenses that sometimes know their quarterback's tendencies more than others.
Yeah, I agree. I tend to agree with you. I don't, do you believe it's a real competition? Do you think this is a real quarterback competition?
I mean, it's real. Yeah, I think in terms of.
You think CJ can lose it?
Yeah, I do. I think he can, in the terms of if he keeps throwing picks and they don't feel like he's going to be the most accurate, quarterback who's going to protect the ball, they're not going to do that. Nick Caserio has been pretty consistent about the last 3 years, and DeMeco Ryans is saying the same things. And I mean, you and I probably both agree that if you're investing a number 2 overall pick in a guy, and you got all these guys like Laramie Tunsil calling him QB1, it probably behooves you to give him the shot to make mistakes and all of that. So, but I think what they're doing, they believe in competition. They keep saying that all the time. And CJ Stroud himself said when he got here, he didn't want anything given to him. So they're going to open things up. And I think their rationale, they haven't said as much, but I mean, my feeling is that if they spend the number 2 overall pick on CJ Stroud, and that gives the competition level that Davis Mills suddenly starts performing well, I think they'll call that a pick well spent. And in that sense, I think it is real. But if it comes down to a toss-up, and I just feel like they would probably tend to go with the guy who gives them the long tenure. I mean, because remember, whenever they drafted Davis Mills first, that was Nick Casero's first draft pick ever, and they had Tyrod Taylor when Taylor was injured, but then came back, and there was some questions about his durability and whether he was going to perform. Like, you might as well just go with Davis Mills, and that's what they did to see what they had in him. So they're gonna. I think they're going to tend to go with the guy that gives them the more future if it comes down to more of a close call.
What about the weapons? I was talking about this today on In the Loop, 10 to 2 Central Sports Radio 610, the Odyssey app. Go check out the Will Anderson interview. Is the Locker Room. Appreciate everyone for coming through. Subscribe, like, right along. We got Brooks Kubena of the Houston Chronicle with us. Does it feel like the 6 wide receivers are kind of set right now? Because I kind of feel that way. And I think it's interesting that the other day in special teams, and this might just be a small observation, but they have Hutchinson as the number one gunner on the left side, which, I mean, that's important. That can earn you a spot on a team. Noah Brown earned a spot on the Cowboys doing special team stuff and knowing how to block. It does seem like the wide receiver position is set, and I think Amari Rodgers knew that, and I think they kind of knew that as well, and that might be why they had that mutual parting of ways.
Yeah, I mean, that was my take on it as well. And Xavier Hutchinson has shown up the last couple of days, getting some long touchdowns. Even though I see Cody Stutes is in here, I'm not in a cave. This light just cascades a blinding thing in here. Okay, so I'm trying to give you all a better experience. But Cody pointed out, as we all, and the tendency to sing touchdowns, like Will Anderson would have creamed Davis Mills on that pass, which is true. But he's still making catches. He had a nice catch over the middle from Case Keenum the other day. He also had a long touchdown against Derek Stingley in practice that wasn't with pressure. So I think he's actually turning into somebody I could see getting a lot of snaps this year and even breaking out in more ways than we thought beforehand. But like, just looking at the wide receivers, so 6 guys, you've got Robert Woods, John Mechie. He's looking great.
I wanted to throw this observation at you, and I thought it was funny because I brought it up to Will Anderson too. So after practice, Stingley and Mechie were on the side working together. And the reason why I can see this so closely is because we're on that far field, like pulling back the circle. We're on the far field where the quarterbacks work, and sometimes guys come do conditioning. So they're doing routes, like they're doing routes against each other, and then it's kind of like a study session. Like, you can tell they're like getting real technical and stuff and moving their hands. And Nico Collins comes over there while they're working out, and he's like, it's basically like a guy coming, "Hey, can I get in here? Like, can I get a rep in? Can I work with you?" Right. And while he's there, it's almost like Mechie was teaching him, and Stingley too. And it's I don't say that to insult Nico Collins. But I just think John Mechie, I don't think I've seen someone that hasn't played, that's been sitting around. It's not like this is like a really old team, but that has like just kind of that presence where it seems like he demands respect of guys that have been there for a while, or guys that are even like older than him.
Well, it makes sense with sense with his story, though, right? I mean, this is his second year, and I mean, he was battling leukemia all of last year, so he's gained everybody's respect. I mean, we saw him in the locker room last year. He was very present given his circumstance, and to go through that, he's an inspiration to all these people. So just seeing that and how he's worked back to the field is a big thing. So that's going to go a long way with a lot of guys on the team and the coaching staff. So I mean, that's definitely built in. But I mean,
you were going through the receivers before I interrupted you.
Yeah. No, I mean, just watching him go one-on-one in the slot against Desmond King, he did a double move and got open. I mean, when you think about Bobby Slowick's offense, I'm going to write a story later on this week about it. But it's one of the reasons I think, well, Ben McDaniel, as the wide receiver coach, has been part of the coaching staff transition, one of the few that was retained. And I've talked to him over the years about how he keeps using wide receivers in different slots. It's positionless in some ways. I mean, they're not the only team that does that, but John Mechie played inside as well as outside, mostly outside at Alabama. And we've seen him move around, and there's motions, there's things that he's involved. I think he's going to be a big part of that. But yeah, so Robert Woods, John Mechie, Nico Collins, Xavier Hutchinson, and Tank Dell. and
Noah.
Noah. So there you go. So the other guys, like, are names probably nobody really has ever heard before: Jesse Matthews, Johnny Johnson, Jalen Camp,
Although
and
we've
Alex
heard
Bachman. So, like, I mean, there's your six. It's pretty clear.
Yeah, and Noah seems to be one of DeMeco's favorites. Like and I said this like when they brought him in. I said this coaches are gonna love this guy. Like he just has. I mean, anytime you hear a wide receiver, you talk to it. You were at his first media availability. Anytime a wide receiver is going up there and like taking pride in being in blocking packages, like in the past, that's such a rarity that coaches like that type of thing. And he's been okay. Like he's been all right. The craziest thing for me about Tank Dell is if I didn't know he was 5'8" while I was watching him, I wouldn't feel like he was 5'8". Like I wouldn't feel like he was big, but
Well,
I
it actually says
like
he's 5'10" on this roster. So
okay, that's a lie. That's a lie. But he's lining up outside. They're stacking him on some routes. They're putting him in the slot. So like any notion that, Bobby Slowick, he's still going to have to get creative, but any notion that Bobby Slowick's just going to put him in motion, he's going to be like some sort of like gadget guy. I mean, they're lining him up everywhere. They're lining up traditionally on the outside. They're lining him up with that little stack thing that they like to do. It seems like Tank Dell, I mean, he's been pretty good, and he was good today too. Good-ish.
Yeah, I saw him. He was in a one-on-one with Steven Nelson, who ended up jumping and dislodging one from him. I still need to see more from him. I mean, the thing is, I want to see this offense in action in preseason before I start making decisions about players.
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm never a guy for hyperbole, and
I am.
Tank Dell, he hasn't really, like with Hutchinson, for example, right? The long ball touchdowns. Tank Dell was kind of that guy that we thought might be that with the speed and getting out in space. And I mean, even with a defense that's not technically supposed to be bringing people down, and I don't know. I think Dell. What's interesting to me about him too is them cycling him through the kick and the punt returns. Is he going to work himself into that? And I mean, we've seen Desmond King do well in punt returning, and then right now, I mean, that was the other thing with Amari Rodgers, right? So he was someone that might have been able to do that, and they still, I believe they still have Steven Sims, who they picked up in free agency, and that the specialist. I mean, I think Nick Cassera might have learned his lesson from the Andre Roberts year in 2021, where he was cut 5 games into the season. You don't really reserve spots for a guy that's just going to do specials for you.
Him some bread too.
I'd like to see Dell. I mean, he had skins on the wall, but I'd like to see Dell really return these kicks and stuff, because I just haven't seen that explosivity that we've been advertised.
I don't even think they look at him as a deep guy. It almost seems like they look at him as like an intermediate guy. That's what it seems like. It seems like their deep guys are like they're bigger guys. Maybe they just respect his route running a little bit more.
Well, they need it. The last couple of years, just even getting first downs over the crossers was difficult. So, I mean, if he can supply that, I think that's one of the big reasons that they also picked up Dalton Schultz, who we've seen make some plays last couple of practices before he went down with the big hit from Jimmy Ward. That's going to be big. I mean, we've Schultz, I actually really enjoy talking to him because he's very opinionated. Asked him about being in Texas, and he was like, I lost people when I said I hated Tex-Mex, but as long as he can pull in a crossing route for a first down instead of another third down check down, I think people will like him just fine. Yeah,
you mentioned the tight end position, kind of thin at the moment. Schultz, Brevin Jordan, both a little bit hobbled. Seemed like Quintariano is intensifying a little bit. If I had to call my shot, I'd say he's back later on this week. I'm not doctor. I don't know how serious it is, but I mean, he was running full speed sprints. It seemed like they were kind of trying to get him ready. I don't know. You give him 2 days off before you bring him back. I don't know, but say it again.
Yeah, they know more about what they have in Quintariano, and
and to his credit, he was ready to go last year after being hurt.
He missed a beat. The conversation I've had about him is it's not serious. It's not something where they think this is going to be long term, and any additions they make about tight end right now, even with Schultz being out, they're not worried about that. It's just to get bodies in camp. And they've got a couple of guys that are kind of in that build for Q. Even with the touchdowns that he had last year being 6'6", and then this brings up an interesting point too with Bobby Slowick's offense. I mean, last two offensive coordinators, Pep Hamilton and Tim Kelly, would run 13 personnel a lot. Bobby Slowick isn't probably going to do that all that much. They're more a 21 personnel type, bringing in an actual fullback, and Andrew Beck seems to have a hold on that. And Troy Hairston left practice the other day. He brings a little bit more, I think, in the passing game for them. So you're not going to just be throwing out that third tight end that basically serves as an extra blocker. So as long as Schultz and Couturiano are not long-term injuries, I think that position's going to be pretty solid.
Yeah, and the thing though for me with Brevin is I thought it was kind of like poetic that his best play of camp he limps off the field right afterwards. And for me, a hamstring injury for Brevin Jordan is a big injury at this point. With where he's at and with what's in front of him and with what you need from that position. I know, if it happened to Schultz, if it happened to even maybe Beck, if it happened to Quitoriano, it'd be like, oh yeah, we got to figure it out. But nagging injuries and inconsistency and all that's it's kind of been the story for Brevin for 2+ years. So
yeah, and
have to get back out there.
Not only that, his injuries were there, but last year he was a healthy scratch for a couple of games towards the end of the year. It wasn't just his injuries.
For Shrek and Quitoriano.
Yeah, I mean, he was an odd fit the last couple of years. I think the one thing that would benefit him in this offense is that Bobby Slowick likes to set people in motion, and maybe he'd be able to better utilize him in the hybrid system. But again, if you're looking for two tight end sets, he just hasn't demonstrated himself as a good blocker, all around guy. And I went back and listened to your interview with Schultz, and he was saying he offered Brevin Jordan money, an undisclosed amount for that number 9 jersey.
I should have taken it.
Brevin declined. He might get it anyway by the end of training camp.
That's why I said stay tuned. After he said it, I said stay tuned. I mean, and the other thing is, if I were Brevin Jordan, I'd want to change the vibe. Even if you think you're going to be on the squad, I would just want to change the vibe. Why not just change the vibe with the jersey number?
I mean, Malik Collins did it, went from 97 to 96, had a better year, and got himself another 2-year deal. So
they love him, don't they? He's one of their. I mean, obviously, because they saw him and then decided to pay him. So it's kind of clear they love him. They love Noah. Who else do you think? Will Anderson is on the side. The love that they have for Will Anderson. I mean, find someone who loves someone the way that DeMeco loves Will Anderson.
It's
who else
wild.
It's wild.
Nick Caserio he's totally anti-rookie hype, and DeMeco Ryans is saying that he's the gold standard player. This is how I want everybody to practice, which is fine. I don't have a problem with that.
It's really transparent. It's not, but it actually shows that it's authentic, because it's not like a front, rookies don't know shit, like O'Brien type of thing. It's authentic.
Well, when he's in their practice, just folding sides of second team offensive lines, you're like, okay, well, maybe they should be excited about this guy. And also they invested so much in him by trading two first-round picks and a package of picks for him. So, I mean, he has to perform. And DeMeco Ryans, I wrote about Will Anderson today. And I mean, the more you start looking into the kind of defense the 49ers ran under DeMeco Ryans, the more it makes sense why they wanted to push so much to get him, and why they may have gone Will Anderson. And there was rumors about them not picking a quarterback. In the terms of the defense DeMeco Ryans wants, that it's called wide 9 in the terms of the scheme, but basically Will Anderson lines up as far out as possible, even with the tight end there, and he's just coming off the side of the ball, just streaking towards the backfield, hoping to disrupt the quarterback or shift people into, the rest of the defense that's waiting for him there. So Ryans wanted somebody that could do that. And if you look at the defensive ends, I mean, they had Jerry Hughes, Jonathan Grenard, who had like Brevin Jordan has had a lot of injuries. there really wasn't somebody on the roster that fit that mold. So that DeMeco Ryans is that excited about Will Anderson is actually really encouraging when you think about the kind of defense they're trying to run. So we haven't seen him be able to tee off against quarterbacks or even running backs in full contact drills. But I think when we see joint practices and him against the Patriots, I think he's going to show up in a big way.
I do too. Let's hear DeMeco love up on Will Anderson. This is love. There is love in the air at training camp.
For us, Will, it's this relentless mindset of how he attacks each day. Right? He comes out with a relentless motor. He plays with a physical mindset every play. Everybody around, they can just look at Will and see how we need to practice. Right? What does it look like if you want to be a great player? You have to work that way. So it all starts with the work ethic, and he's there. Right? That's what we want. He exemplifies exactly what I want in that type of player. And playing the end position, now the difference is now we'll play primarily with our hand in the dirt, different from when he stood up in college. The main difference is just he's going to be attacking. Right? We don't want him coming off, reading, playing slow. The main thing we want him to do is play as fast as possible so he can go make plays for us. We're not going to slow him down.
All right. So there you go. Whatever you're going to
– excited.
You have Caserio. And then you have Caserio saying, we're going to line him up on the inside. We're going to line him up on the outside. We're going to line him up on the left side. Like, yeah, they clearly – it's quite obvious that was probably their favorite guy. But what we have – go ahead.
It's when you think about the defense last year, the worst running defense in the history of the Texans. They gave up the most rushing yards ever. I was talking to Christian Harris about this today too, where one of the main differences between Lovie Smith's and DeMeco Ryans' defense is that they're also going to be blitzing more frequently. And to say more frequently is like Lovie Smith barely blitzed at all. And like Will Anderson's going to be coming off the edge, but the rest of the defensive line is also going to be stunting, moving. The linebackers are going to be filling holes. They're going to be a lot more proactive than reactive. And I think that's going to be a major difference. What Christian Harris said, he's like, we got guys flying all over the place, which, one of the things about Lovie Smith's defense, like he felt like encouraging players to act based on instinct. But the last couple of years, watching how these offenses are motioning, how they're running misdirections, it's just people are in the wrong place at the wrong time. And I think when you look at a defense like this, where they're actually inflicting and forcing an offense to make a choice, that's going to be a lot more productive. Yeah,
and I enjoyed once he kind of understood what you were asking Stingley on the system. That was by the way. I think I have that. Yeah, I do have that. You want to hear the awkward exchange between two old friends?
Oh boy.
DeMeco about his philosophy on pressuring defense. It seems like interceptions like those can come from that too. How does he explain pressure and what's the cornerback's relationship along that?
What? Like, you talking about the pressure within the defense? Say it again.
So how can this defense force turnovers?
Anytime you put in pressure, the ball come out quicker. So in the back end, we got to know what's going on. We got to know what the quarterback want to do, where he want to go. First read, last read, all that. And then once we lock into that, we're going to get the ball.
By the way, Derek Stingley, as like the podium critic, I know that like if you just listen to that and that was the first time you heard Derek Stingley, you'd be like, man, this guy's pretty dry. That was honestly like Kevin Hart for like what I've heard from Derek Stingley. Like he does, even Derek Stingley seems a little bit looser. He seems a little bit looser. Like,
oh yeah, like I've covered him since his true freshman year at LSU.
Yeah.
Okay. Like on that, I feel like I could have been a little bit more direct with my question. I kind of like went on around there. So anyway.
Well, at least you didn't ask these questions that I'm hearing way too much of. And I'm not even calling anyone individually, but what's the importance of blocking? Like I'm hearing way too many, like me and Lopez were like, what is, I want just one time, one of these guys to just say, when someone says like, what's the importance of having a good offensive line in front of a quarterback? It's like, What do you think? Like,
you want his head decapitated? He's like, okay.
what's the importance of pressuring the quarterback?
But I talked to Stingley off to the side for another story that ran Sunday. He is opening up more. Like I talked to him last week. He is kind of coming more into his veteran self. He invited Jalen Petrie, Christian Harris, Jacoby Francis, among like 20 other guys, some guys that went to LSU with him and other people in the league, to go to Hawaii with him in June. They worked out together. And that conversation, I actually wondered about like maybe even posting the audio that we had back and forth because he was funny. He was talking. I was like, so, what kind of Hawaii stuff did y'all do? He's like, yeah, this, and this. I'm like, do you swim? He's like, nah, man, I don't swim. Like, what are you talking about? You don't swim? You're from the coast. That doesn't mean I'm going in. You don't know what's out there. Sharks, jellyfish, I was like, dude, I didn't realize you didn't want to get out there. Apparently they had all gotten in a group together and were looking on social media, watching. Apparently it was like a lot of posts about like what was lurking in the ocean. So now he's opening up. You can see him and Petrie actually getting along really well. And I think
he said he's better at Madden than Petrie. He made it seem like wasn't even a question. Here's a little more from Stingley.
I get to be at the line of scrimmage.
This is on the system because you talked more. This is more about the system, the difference that you brought up.
I get to be off. I'm doing everything. So I feel like around the ball a lot more plays to be made. So we'll see.
Yeah,
and this is the Madden thing, real quick.
Me, so you gotta ask them too. You gotta ask them who win. I'm better for sure.
Right, there you go. By the way, McClain was on one today too. We'll get into that. This is the annual John McClain weight shaming tour of every training camp that I cover, where he's just flat out asking, how much do you weigh right now? He was on that circle right now. That's an annual thing.
Yeah, Stingley was pretty veiled about it too. He's like, the same weight, just the same. But that little snippet there about playing on the line, I mean, that's a lot of fans probably are really excited about that, because Stingley's peak at LSU was being in man-to-man coverage. I mean, watching him shadow all these top wide receivers in the SEC, and then in Clemson and the national championship as a true freshman, all that stuff. That was his expertise. I mean, he's good in zone coverage, but he's best in man, in my opinion. And I was talking to Corey Undlin, the defensive passing game coordinator, earlier in OTAs. And, I mean, this is a defense that uses a lot of pattern matching, which is kind of a, lingo or jargon in football, where simply it just means you can start in a certain spot and then end up in many different places if you're a cornerback, basically trading off man into zone later on if a wide receiver reaches a certain point. Basically, there are many options that they're going to utilize Derek Stingley's skills, both in man at first and then zone that trades off to everybody else in the secondary. So he's going to be in position to make plays like he did against Nico Collins today, where he was able to shadow him for most of it, jump the route, and take it back for 6. And there are people in the back zone that are going to be able to support him. This secondary, I hesitate to say that it's going to be a top 10 one. I've seen that all across kind of Twitter the past couple of days, and people get excited, and that's great. But this wide receiver group and the quarterback battle is pretty precarious. So, like, there may be just winning against that. So
that's fair, but I do think the secondary could be pretty good, though.
Well, it wasn't that bad
the secondary. I thought that was kind of misleading. Like they didn't give up a passing TD or whatever. I keep hearing DJ say that. I think that's a little bit misleading. But I think the secondary this year can be good, like really good.
What I mean by saying they weren't that bad last year, which they were able to force a lot of interceptions and bring a lot of good quarterbacks. Deshaun Watson had his worst game of his career. They added. Well, I'm just saying that because they added Jimmy Ward. By doing that, I think they've become a very solid secondary that you can expect to not get burned like they were in 21, obviously, and then they can actually be useful to the rest of the defense in terms of the pressure that they're going to get up front and otherwise. So this is a team that's the rebuilding phase is over. This is a team that's going to need some upgrades in certain positions, but they have strengths, and the secondary is one of them. offensively, they've got strengths. The offensive line and the running back core is one of them. So those are things that you can kind of check off and say, all right, they don't need to be searching there anymore.
Yeah, I think they've done a good job of revamping the secondary. We'll see what's up on the O-line. Still got to keep a little bit of an eye on that interior.
Yeah,
little bit, you know.
I'm ready to see Juice Scruggs.
I feel okay about Shaq.
Yeah, I'm watching him. He seems like he's holding his own, and it's interesting whenever you look at the extensions that have been awarded to players. Shaq Mason hasn't played it down, and he's already gotten a 3-year extension. So, I mean, when you've got players like Steven Nelson who've been here for a year, and they're like, you know what, I thought it was, I show up and show yourself on the field. So they must really like Shaq. And whenever they traded for him, they knew that he'd only had a year left on his contract. So that's got to work for them. But I'm ready to see Juice Scruggs in the first rotation.
Joe had some good things to say about him. He said he got singled out in the film session.
Yeah, he did. And I was watching him through my binoculars the other day. They kind of go off to the far side whenever they do their one-on-ones. I mean, they had one-on-ones with wide receivers and corners the other day, which was really fun to watch. But on the far end, they had pass rush, and Juice was going up against kind of second-team players, second rotation guys. Saw him flatten Thomas Booker and hold Kurt Heinisch and neutralize them. And like, I didn't get to see him go against like the interior guys like Malik Collins or Hassan Ridgeway or others. So like, I'd like to see that, and I think we will eventually, because I mean, like, Scott Questenberry came in last year and relieved Justin Britt. I mean, he was supposed to be the backup for most of the year, and then he came in and the interior struggled, and he may do better in a different scheme where they're more zone blocking and they've got some help, and he's got a right guard and Shaq Mason that's expected to be good. So maybe has some elevation to his game. But I mean, they traded up to get Juice Scruggs in the second round. It'd be interesting to see him go against some top competition. Yeah,
no doubt. We got to talk about one of the stars of the last couple days. We got to talk that Cash shit, man. Blake Cashman, my goodness. He looks good in coverage, man. That's not something that I've been, accustomed to seeing. Could have easily had 2 interceptions yesterday. Had a pass break. I guess you could say 2 PBUs. You could say an interception, a PBU, and a drop pick, however you want to say it. And then today he picked off CJ Stroud, his first interception. We know Cashman's going to play some special teams. Can we see Cashman getting more snaps at the linebacker position, because he's looked pretty good?
I think so. Kirksey's been, off to the side the last couple of days with some rest days. And I mean, when you thought about the depth of the linebacker group going in, and it was there was more numbers there than most positions in terms of wondering how it was going to sort out. And when you think about second, third rotation guys, I mean, one of those players was Garrett Wallow. And one of Wallow's problems last year was watching him in coverage. So that Blake Cashman, who got an extension to come back, is getting these interceptions and being in coverage and making those plays whenever those opportunities are there. When Kirksey's out these last couple of days, he's in those first rotations. So, yeah. I mean, in practice, if you make plays, you get a chance to do more of that. So he's an interesting guy. I don't think I would have expected him to be in the running for a first rotation. And neither would I have with Henry To'oto'o. And he's getting a lot of opportunity too. They really like him on the inside. So those are 2 surprises for me when you're entering in, and they signed Denzel Perryman and Christian Kirksey's still hanging around. So Cashman's definitely earned some opportunity. And I don't know. It's like that floater. CJ Stroud tried to float one over the sideline, get it over his head, and he made a good play to go jump forward. Maybe it was a decision that Stroud maybe thought he wasn't going to be able to go and do it, but having watched the practice before, maybe you should have. And I was talking to Christian Harris about it. I was like, what do you think about Cash? I'm like, man, they keep throwing to him. I don't know why. They have confidence in him. So
my impressive thing with Cash is that, and I always look at I always like 2-play stretches where, like, if a guy does something bad, how does he respond the next? But Cashman, like, he had a 2-play stretch where he probably ran 40, 50 yards with Brevin Jordan, and he batted down the pass, and then he runs back, and on the opposite side of the field on a check down by Davis Mills, he gets the interception. So to be able to it was literally the very next play, to be able to on the very next play to be able to, still be, I mean, I'm not saying that he should be like hitting his head and saying, take me out of the game. But I mean, he did run stride for whatever, wherever the hell he was lined up. And then he went back and got the interception on the check down, which is something you kind of got to recognize. I just think, I think this team needs someone who can make plays like that. And I just don't think Christian Kirksey's capable.
Yeah, he's struggled in the last couple of schemes. And I wonder how much of that is the Lovie Smith defense or how much of it is, his play. So obviously the answer is probably both. And it'd be good to see him more frequently in training camp. But I mean, the other thing about working in space in the old system that was an issue that may be fixed in this one, Christian Harris talked about it again today. And part of the reason he went to Hawaii with Derek Stingley was to work on his footwork like a cornerback. He played corner at U-High in Baton Rouge. I remember whenever he was a recruit there, and I was covering LSU at the time. And then he ended up moving to linebacker. They were looking for a position for him. Nick Saban was like, where do we put this guy? And he ended up being a linebacker for him. Outside, projects there, runs a 4.4 still. But what he was talking about with this defense, he finds himself more in space, working in coverage. They want the linebackers to do that. They're giving them those responsibilities. Cashman has that kind of range. And I saw that question, Cashman or Henry.
Yeah.
Their skill sets are completely different. Like Henry is the inside backer who's going to be, tasked with playing between the tackles, getting after the running back. They like the range of those guys on the outside that Cashman's been able to do, to run, like you said, Landry, to go and get those interceptions. Harris closing in with his speed. I saw him in the goal line period today. They ran an outside zone with Damian Pierce, and he cut him off on the edge like that. Like, they want those guys to be there. And whenever you have speed on the outside, you can use those against inside receivers, which is a huge responsibility. And I don't think you literally would have given that to the last two rounds of linebackers, and sometimes they did. And then you'd see the touchdowns there was that running back play that came out, Austin Eckler with the Chargers, and I think another team ended up using the same play later on and just finding guys in space against, confused defenses. I don't think with the speed they have and the direction, and, they're a little bit more intentional, I think. And those guys have shown that they could probably upgrade that.
Let's hear DeMeco talk about Cashman. Here's DeMeco talking that cash-ish.
Blake he's been showing up the past few days. Right? He's showing up in the run game, being physical in the run game. But also, as you see in the past 2 days, I think he's had probably 2 interceptions, 1 PBU. He's showing up around the ball, and it's encouraging to see. The linebackers, there's a lot of competition there, and Blake is doing a really good job.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he didn't say anything wrong there. The linebackers – interesting, secondary interesting, D-line. What about the interior of the D-line? I think we have a good idea of who's going to be there. Is it who are the guys that are, think like right on that fringe?
The fringe, Roy Lopez I've seen get more time on the first team rotation. I thought that maybe he'd be on the fringe because you knew that they like Malik Collins. Sheldon Rankins came in. He's been a veteran for most of the time. The Hassan Ridgeway, I think, goes in and has a chance to do well there. But Kurt Heinisch, he made the team last year, and they made kind of a big to-do about 2 undrafted free agencies making the roster. But I think it's him. I think those are the guys there. You know what you have. That Sheldon Rankins came in off the PUP list and was immediately in the first rotation, told you about the depth that they had there. So I think that's pretty much it's like kind of the wide receivers. You saw the 6-man rotation pretty clearly. I think with the interior, it's the same way. Yeah,
and then on the edge, Jacob Martin good. What are we thinking about there? I'm kind of I know maybe he's special teams can help, but it does seem like he would have basically sent CJ to the hospital the other day. Now, I think it might have been Deculus. It wasn't starting offensive line, but Jacob Martin, kind of like a fringe guy too.
Yeah, I think he presents a little bit more speed that DeMeco Ryans likes, and if he's able to work his way in there, and I'm trying to, I think, and uh, I'm pulling up my projection because I can't remember off the top of my head what I had on the defensive side, because he said he wants to carry 8 or 9 guys. So if you've got Anderson, Collins, Rankins, Grenard, you've got Hughes, Horton, that's 6. You still got to have the defensive interior. I think Ridgeway,
I think Lopez is good.
Lopez makes it. So I think you've got room for. I think you do have room for Jacob Martin. So he probably works his way in there as the 8th or 9th guy, and that means you've got some guys on the fringe like Booker, who, and then Heinisch. So it depends on what they value on the interior. I do think they try and use Will Anderson on the inside too. He showed a little bit of that at Alabama, but I think Martin's got the experience and the speed, and they like that out of him. So I think that's a guy that maybe has a little speed that they can use in that wide 6 that maybe they don't have on the others.
Yeah, it seems like he's in a good spot. Did you notice did that 3-3-5 kind of stick out to you the other day? Did you notice that? They were running a 3-3-5 with Lopez on the inside or on the outside. They actually had him on the left, and they were kind of beefy in the middle. They was a 3-3-5. It's kind of interesting. I don't know if it's going to be normal, but I thought it was interesting seeing Lopez kind of lined up on the outside.
I think that goes along. It goes along with, I think, the creativity they're trying to work through in training camp to find what slots and what guys they can use to create pressure. I remember at LSU, and I'm bringing that up a lot, but Dave Aranda was a defensive mind that found similarly which guys could he use directionally in different holes to create pressure. And they've got Jalen Petrie, who's an all-around guy. They probably want to play him close to the line too. And if you have guys with different strengths that plug holes on certain sides, and then you want to go inside with speed, I think they're toying around with that a little bit in training camp.
So this happens every year. It's a tradition like no other. The annual John McClain weight shaming tour. It was on full display today. John McClain, this is Will Anderson. He got it from the beginning. Now, actually, he got it second, but this was Will Anderson, and Will Anderson was cool, just giving out the weight to the old man. I guess he respects the OG John McClain.
What do you weigh right now? Do you feel like you're going down? What you need to add in?
I'm about 260 right now. I feel good, feel explosive. Strength staff and nutrition has been doing a really good job of helping me balance, my meals and workouts and everything like that. So I feel great.
All right, 260. This was the Stingley interaction as the McClain weight shaming tour continues.
You look like you spent a lot of time in the weight room in the off season, didn't you?
Yeah.
What was the purpose?
You said what was the purpose?
Yeah.
I mean, I like to hit, you know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's why.
What do you weigh now?
Still the same weight.
All right.
There
we go.
What's the purpose of working out? Well, I don't want to. I kind of want to be strong, I don't want to.
Football player,
Yeah.
He also asked him about Sauce, and I thought this was interesting. McClain brought up Sauce Gardner. There's going to be a little. I don't know. I think Stingley's probably a little bit tired of hearing about Sauce. Maybe a little.
It's going to be. His whole career is going to be that way. They're paired together intrinsically. So if he doesn't make an All-Pro, people are going to be pissed, and like you're just going to look back and forth with these guys. So, and being out with the injury last year, people want to see him through a full season. So they had the chance to pick Sauce. They went with Derek Stingley, and number 3 overall. That's the highest, I think, ever that it tied with a couple other NFL teams to pick a cornerback. So there's going to be high expectations for him. But I think it is notable, even though 260, Will Anderson is a smaller defensive end, and he came in, I think, 253 in the NFL Combine. To get up to 260 is kind of a big deal, and it warranted maybe a question for that because you want him to be able to take on the Laramie Tunsil's of the world. So
Seth says his frame looks like he can put on plenty more weight.
He could. He looks like a running back in a lot of ways, in my opinion. Whenever he's up there at the the podium, he looks like he could play pretty much any skill position. And it's kind of interesting too, because I looked at his frame, and whenever I wrote about him in OTAs, if you can check that one out, it's pinned at the top of my Twitter profile. The comparison's Khalil Mack in a lot of ways, because that frame, the way he looks, the speed that he has, and they unleashed Khalil Mack too in certain ways with the Raiders. So I think he wants to get that power. I think they want to hold on to some of the speed too, but 260, I think that's probably in the range they want him at.
Yeah, and I just can't wait to see him play. But if you can get a little Khalil Mack, that's cool, especially after the Clowney thing. Here is McLean asking Stingley about Sauce.
You and Sauce Gardner developed a relationship before last season. What do you think about all the attention he got last year?
Who?
Sauce.
I mean, you know, he having fun up there. I'm doing my thing, talking to my teammates out here. I mean, it is what it is. Great season for him. Great season for a lot of other rookie corners. You got kid in Kansas. You got the Bills. You got, you know, we everywhere. So everybody just having fun. Everybody doing their thing. So
there you go. Not biting that hook, sir.
What if he just? I mean, would you rather of him just say like, "I hate Sauce. He sucks." I mean,
I just would have been like, I just would have been like, so Sauce Gardner's getting a lot of love. Is there any extra chip on your shoulder, knowing that, you know, he got drafted after you, and now there's talk about y'all two being linked together?
yeah, I mean,
Did you develop a relationship? Nah. Did not. We did not develop any relationship. I made a prediction. I want to get your take on this, because this is something that I think you'll have to think about. And I said this to Lopez and Figgy. So we got 6 podium appearances left of players for in the next, like, this week.
oh, okay.
We have the coaches tomorrow,
Mhm.
and then Thursday and Friday we're gonna have 6 players. I think Cashman gets a podium. I
You
think
can request him.
No, I don't want to request. No, I don't want to do people like that. No, I don't want to do people like that. I just think that Cashman is going to get sent to the podium.
Okay, you're probably right.
Do you think
Probably
so?
right.
Y'all got to hear from Tank, right?
Look, well, I don't think we've heard from any rookies yet, have we?
Tank and Mechie. Well, we heard from Will today.
Well, yeah. All right.
And we heard
Caesar.
from
That's
Juice.
right.
We heard from them all like that, but no, we heard from Tank. We haven't heard from
Yeah.
Tank. We haven't heard from Tank.
Tank, we haven't heard from since not even in OTAs. So
No.
I'd bet that's something that they're holding off on until he actually plays it down. Because like also he's the U of H star, so I think they're also trying to.
The local TV people are just foaming at the mouth for Tank.
I mean, they're getting plenty of B-roll. So.
But it could be Mechie's going up this week.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, I'm really excited to talk to him myself. I mean, it's been I've talked any conversation I've had about him the past years. I mean, it's even beyond just the leukemia he's had. He's in his whole life story. It's really compelling. So once we get a chance to talk to him and hear from him, I think we'll start to understand a lot about what he can mean to this team. And I mean, what's not lost, I don't think
well, that's the other thing. He's playing well too. Like, he's kind of evolving to where it's not like just a feel good story. It's a damn, this guy might really have something.
Well, they traded up for him. They got him in the second round.
And they took him over Pickens. They took him over Sky Moore. They had a lot of options at the position.
And I think too, like Pep Hamilton had his struggles last year, but the wide receiver group was missing him. I mean, that was a big reason why some of the times you were looking throughout the season and saying, okay, they're having some trouble with separation. They're having some trouble with interlocking routes. They're trying to find open passing lanes. Like Mechie, they missed him. And for him to be back is a big deal.
Are y'all going to get Steven Nelson up there? Rock WP asks. I think they'd probably avoid that one, right?
I did ask, and I think it was interpreted as a joke. So I don't.
Yeah. With that said, though, he's been pretty good in camp. You got to give him that.
Yes.
In camp.
Yeah. And the thing is like, I mean, with it's interesting to lob an insult at the guy that could give you the extension you want, especially whenever I think they saved $3 or $4 million if they cut him. But the cornerback room, you don't know exactly what you got from Shaq Griffin yet. I mean, he is a Pro Bowler, but he ended last year with back surgery. So there's enough depth there that Steven Nelson has a little bit of leverage on his own too. They both benefit from him being on the roster right now. So as long as he's performing well, it's interesting. Whenever Nick Caserio came out that first day, I kind of made a joke about it. And he's like, I know he doesn't like my wardrobe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of a big step too. We're talking about how in a different way how Stingley's opened up and talk about things. Nick Caserio's out of this rebuild and he can have distance, be the GM. As long as you're out there on the field and you're performing, like, I don't really think you have to like me, and that's fine. So it'll be interesting to see how that works out. And I mean, the other thing too is we saw if Nelson wanted to, because we've seen other players, like Chris Moore, for example. I'm not saying it's the same thing, but you stick with the team, you play through the end of the year, and you don't get an extension. Now you're looking elsewhere. Nelson could play really well out there at the end of the day. He's in his early 30s. They may decide to go draft another corner or pick up another one in free agency, and then he's out there looking for another contract anyway. So if he was trying to push himself out in the summer, that's precarious because we saw DeAndre Hopkins shop himself around for about a month until the Titans were the one that gave him a contract. So Nelson probably doesn't want to do that. And you'd also have to rely on
DeAndre Hopkins. That's
no,
the thing.
no,
That's
no.
the problem.
Yeah, you're not too.
There lies the problem. I think he is.
Yeah. So I don't know how much more money he wanted. I mean, he's in the 40s for a cornerback in terms of rankings, but his production in other ways are a little bit higher than that. So I don't know how much more money we're talking about. And whenever they re-signed Shaq Mason with him not even playing it down, it does seem interesting to know how much Nelson actually wants. So that'll be a conversation if we ever get a chance to talk to him.
Yeah, we'll see about that. On to the comments. Armchair GM keyboard coach asks, are y'all really worried about Stroud, or are these his rookie strategies? I don't know what that means. I mean, even Dak Prescott threw at least 2 INTs. Also have 213 saying, just coming in, starting the beginning of the live, did Brooks say a rookie throwing some picks in practice is concerning? I mean, I don't think you said the sky was falling, but I mean, yeah, you don't want any quarterback, especially someone that you would most likely in a perfect world like to start throwing interceptions.
When Davis Mills threw 4 picks in one practice in his rookie year, that was concerning. When CJ Stroud throws 2 picks in a practice and one of them being a pick 6, it's concerning, especially whenever the main thing for this guy is that he's an accurate precision passer. I mean, I'm not saying he's not going to make his mistakes. I mean, that's going to happen, but it's concerning. You can look that up in the dictionary, but it's not like I'm saying this guy's going to suck. So, yeah, I don't know. The part of that too is what was that first question that you pulled up?
Something about strategy. I don't think it made
his strategy. He wants to throw picks so that he understands his mistakes.
Yeah,
Dak Prescott led the NFL in picks last year. He tied with Davis Mills. So I don't know if that's a comparison you want, but this offense, it is interesting to know whether they're both pushing each other, making throws, and just saying, screw it, let's go for it on this throw. I was actually asking Clint, in practice, are you more inclined to throw the ball just because you feel like you have to, or can you tuck it and run? I mean, when you're being watched by coaches and evaluated based on your performance, especially Nick Caserio, who has said that he values you to take care of the ball, they're probably trying to do that. So in those things, when you're told those things and you know the history of the Texans, you're going to be grading players based on what they do in that. So, yeah, throwing a pick, not great.
What are you asking Bobby tomorrow?
We're going to talk about his playbook. We're going to talk about the density of it, Dameon Pierce, and not only that, just teaching the offense to the players. And because this is his first time doing it, and he was only a passing game coordinator for 1 year, and he's got a really interesting background. Went to Pro Football Focus in his break, and I actually talked to Mike Shanahan today for the story because that was his first boss. Worked with with Washington, and was actually a defensive assistant. And what Mike was talking a lot about was the value of being on both sides of the ball to understand where he can attack, where he can do all of that. And it's funny because like Shanahan, Kubiak, all of that leading to Kyle, leading to DeMeco, to Bobby, what they're going to run here. And I was just curious a little bit about how Mike saw his offense change over time. And so there's going to be a little bit of that I'm going to ask Bobby about, and how he can exploit defenses and work through that and teach. And that's the other thing is when he was an analyst and all that kind of stuff, he was very good at making the film cut-ups, and you got to prepare that for coaches to teach people. So those are kind of the bare bone materials that I'm kind of going with. So Bobby, if you're watching, you kind of know what's coming. So I mean, it's the biggest thing for this team. And I mean, the biggest thing is how do you develop CJ Stroud?
No doubt.
How do you improve an offense that produced the fewest yards per play per drive in the last 2 years? So Bobby's first-time offensive coordinator, big task.
Yeah, huge. Andrew Lowe asks, with how good the young wide receivers have looked, is Woods still a lock? Yes, he is a lock.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, it almost feels like they just feel okay about Woods, to where they're kind of they're letting other guys and trying to figure out stuff about other guys. But Robert Woods, he'll be a starter week 1.
Yeah,
I don't think there's any doubt about it. Haven't been any like struggles. Haven't been any like massive things going on. Do you have a Kenyon Green opinion? He does seem to be consistently with the one, so there is that. There's not the it's not the in and out crap that we've seen. And I don't say crap like in a he should have been in there the whole time type of way, but it's not, he's the starting guard right now. I mean, there's no question about it.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at the talent that they have, Dieter's been a reserve guy. I mean, Kenyon Green, number 15 overall pick, they need him to be in training camp getting these reps and developing in the ways that he didn't in training camp last year when he was out with the concussion. It's very valuable for him to be in there all the time. So it's good that he's getting these reps right now. And even if he's still like recovering from his offseason knee surgery, and my conversations about that, it wasn't that serious, just kind of cleaning out some things, but he was missing OTAs. So he needs to be in there. And even if he struggles a bit, he needs to be in the mix of things. So it's a good thing that he's in there.
How did Valladay look today to you? He's just there.
He's interesting to me. I mean, I talked to some people earlier on in training camp and in OTAs, and they like him. He was productive in college. He's obviously, you've got Damian Pierce and Devin Singletary. Those are going to be the guys that get the major bulk of things. But Mike Boone, I saw him today actually break away, and I saw some speed from him for the first time in training camp. He's going to be an interesting guy. But Valladay's got that capability in catching the ball, being an all-around player. Whenever they went red zone today, goal line more, I should say, because it was first and 10 from the 10. CJ Stroud and Davis Mills both didn't score touchdowns with their offense, but Case Keenum on a few plays in, Valladay was the one that got free on a one-on-one with I think it was Murray. No, it was MJ Stewart. So broke off of him and got a touchdown. So Valladay has gotten a touchdown there. And when you know what you've got in Pierce and Singletary, Valladay's going to be getting a lot of carries in the preseason.
Preseason is where you decide your third running back for the most part.
So people fell in love with who was it a couple of years ago? And the running game was so bad throughout the year. Phillips.
Yeah, Scotty.
Yeah.
Phillips. Yeah.
And then he came in and it was not any better. But
yeah, he was. I mean, a lot of Scotty Phillips talk.
Scotty Phillips
back in those days, which seems so far away. Which kind of
that's like John McClain's been around for 40 years, and I've been around for 3, and that's like the history I bring. Remember, like whenever Scotty Phillips was in training camp, and that they traded Bradley Roby to start, and then they had no cornerbacks the rest of the year. That's the history I bring, and nobody's going to care about that. So,
well, I mean, I think it's more relevant now than some of the stuff McClain talks about. Well, McClain's going to be on with us tomorrow at 11. So
great.
It'll be good to talk to him. I'm hoping we're going to get one of the coordinators. I want to talk to Slowick. You'll be at the podium talking to the rest of them, and we'll see how CJ responds. And then after that, you'll get a much needed, much deserved. I say it with quotes. So off day, you'll probably still be writing now.
Yeah. I actually am still, yeah, I got back from Italy on Wednesday of last week at 4 a.m. So I'm
You're getting your
ready
legs on.
I'm ready to start writing. I'm ready to get into this. So
There you go. Well, tell the people where they can check out that fine work and get some sleep. We got a early morning.
HoustonChronicle.com. Go subscribe. I believe it's 25 cents for about 4 months.
Steal.
You can either take a squeeze at the pump or pay me. So
pay him. Pay the man.
Get it in. So HoustonChronicle.com. Coming on that. Find me on Twitter at Kubena, and would love to have you for the rest of the season.
All right. Brooks, I appreciate you. I'll see you out there tomorrow. Thanks for the observations. Best beat writer, in my opinion. And I'm not just saying that because you just gave me an hour of your time. I appreciate you, my friend.
I appreciate you too, Landry.
There you go. It's my guy, Brooks Kubena, here in the locker room. Subscribe, like, ride along. Be back at practice tomorrow. We'll see how CJ Stroud looks. We'll hear from one of the coordinators on the show, Bobby Slowick, maybe, Frank Russ. We'll see how that goes, but it'll be fun. And as always, when it comes to this Texans stuff, we're all in this together. Little update tomorrow. Be on the lookout for a Will Anderson video as well at around 2.
You know what it is. Let's get it. Hey, locker room. Yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk. Yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source. We the pulse of the city too. Landlocked. Got the game in the headlock. Localize every time. Can't stop, won't stop. Yeah, we top 2 and we not 2. Plugged in daily digital on YouTube. We got taste for days. Opinions to give. We got takeaways. If it's up, then it's up. We number 1. You don't need to try your luck. Locker room, yeah, we in the locker room. Texas talk, yeah, you know what we about to do. Localize every angle's what we really do. We the source, we the pulse of the city too.